The Golden Lord has returned to Master 1. He's definitely not a tiered deck, but I think he still has an opportunity to sit in, like, Rogue. This has been a pretty fun deck to play around with, and it actually has pretty good matchups against a decent number of decks that are pretty popular right now. So our first replay, we're going to be going up against a Tearlements deck. So one thing that was really surprising about this Eldlich deck is that it literally has a significantly better time going second than it does going first. Like, I've cut evenly matched down to 2 and triple tactics talent down to 2 because they suck going first. You're never doing anything to get those effects activated, but somehow you always have access to them going second. I'll go into like the statistics and the deck list at the end of the video, but there's definitely, even after getting to Master 1, it feels like there's a lot of room for improvement in this deck. Like, it definitely has not been solved by any means. Alright, pretty standard Tearlements, although they also end on a Barone, which is nice. Okay, so they've actually got, okay, what do they got here? 1 negate, 2 negates, probably a monster negate or something, and then a summon negate. So pretty good board, all things considered. We're not just going to evenly and instantly win. Of course, we're going to evenly, you know, at some point. That's probably the smartest negate to do, because then they can summon back and get another search and even do some more graveyard stuff. Yeah, so at this point they're probably pretty confident, like they have pretty strong control of the board. So what I love about these particular floodgates is going second, they don't feel like total bricks. Like, this is almost as good as Torrential Tribute or something. You flip it, and almost all of their monsters have to leave, like Aqua, Dark, Wind. If they don't negate this, they're done. Same with Rivalry. You know, Warrior, Aqua, Spellcaster, if they don't negate this, then they're also board cleared. But then going first, they also limit them quite a bit. So obviously the first negate, and it turns out they had a second negate. So my hope had been just to lock them in with Rivalry, but obviously that's not going to work. We're going to have to rely on blowing everything up. And they also get to fuse off of that. All this happens in the draw phase. And there's a Kaleido Heart. Okay, so here what I do, he is trying to bounce one of my traps, so obviously I have to chain to activate it. The way this works is there's either a chance that it will banish everything in grave, or it will send an equal number of cards in grave from my deck to the graveyard. So I want there to be as many guards as possible in the grave, one way or the other. So I'm going to chain it so Torrential Tribute activates first, so everything's either in the grave and gets banished, or it maximizes the amount of draw power I have. I've ended up cutting this card because they can ash it, and it feels really bad to get ashed when you're either trying to do what turns out to be not as big of a disruption as you might think, or to send a bunch of cards to grave. So I actually replaced this with a spell card that I'll go into later. So everything's banished. We called it right, which is nice because this guy, their boss monster, Kaleido Heart, was going to come back, but obviously he didn't. This type of a board state happens all the time with this particular Eldlich deck. Like, we have tons of trap cards that just blow up the board. Torrential Tribute, Needle Sealing, Daruma Karma Cannon, and then once their board has been blown up once or twice, you know, a lot of decks have trouble recovering, obviously. And yeah, there's just nothing they can do. We send Eldlich, we took out that spell, we knew what it was because they searched it, and there was nothing they could do. We won. Easy peasy. That was this going second game. Let's see what we have for number 2. Going second against Spirals. So I think something happened where once the Duelist Cup started, like a lot of the meta players all went over to the Duelist Cup, so I think it's possible that the climb is a little bit easier in the days following the start of the Duelist Cup. Either that or just this format is incredibly diverse. Like, it's supposed to be a tier 1, Snake Eyes branded Despia format, but I ran into those maybe 20-ish% of the time. I saw Super Heavy, Samurai, Stun, Sprite, Punk, Tyr, Kashtira, Evil Eye. Obviously, this is Spiral, Gold Pride, Lab, Runic, Naturia, Vanquish Shoal, Grenadier, Mathmech, Resonator, like Infernoble, Melfi, Scareclaw. Yeah, so it's a pretty diverse format even at the top of like Master 3, Master 2. Yeah, so the part of the reason I bring in that up is because there are a lot of duels where I go in and I have to do quite a bit of the thing that Yu-Gi-Oh players hate to do, which is to read. Like, I have no idea what spirals do. They're just like, okay, it's one of these turbo summon a bunch of cards things. They like can tell what the card on the top of my deck is, and then if they guess it correctly, then they get to do stuff. But one of the things that I thought is like, okay, I have no idea what this deck does, but it's obviously in like master rank, so it must be doing something. And they're also, it must have strengths and it must have weaknesses. So what I guessed is that it probably has weaknesses where if you hit it with like an Ash and an Imperm, they probably can't build their board very easily. And then it also probably has a weakness where, unlike Snake Eyes or Branded, it probably has a hard time recovering resources. So my goal is, I don't know what this is, but I'm just going to try to destroy their board, and if I can do that, then maybe they won't be able to recover. So looking at what they have here, they have double monster negate, they have a floodgate that makes it so that special summon monsters can't activate their effects unless they're co-linked, which means they have to be like connected here in the link zone or here, so like a pseudo skill drain. And then this is an omni negate. If it has 3 cards linked, then you can negate the activation and banish a card. Here they activated Max C, and I don't care about Max C. We're not special summoning this turn. We're probably not even special summoning it next turn. But we need to bait out something, because I would really like to resolve reasoning. I mentioned earlier I swapped out Fiend Comedian for this. So reasoning is similar to Fiend Comedian, where it can send a lot of cards to grave. You only send cards to grave, you never banish your opponent's graveyard, but it turns out this is generally a much more powerful effect. It's not once per turn, so you're not going to brick on having 3 of them. It's good going first, obviously, because you can send your resources to grave, and it's good second, as you'll see now, because you can special summon something if they guess wrong, which they usually do. They usually guess number 4, because they think it's going to be a Fairy Tale Snow, but obviously it's probably going to be like an Eldlich or a Lord of the Heavenly Prison instead. So we managed to bait out his Omni Negate by using Called by the Grave on his Max C, and now we're going to use Reasoning. If they have Ash, then we just cry, but let's see if they have Ash. Nope. Alright, oh, so he did guess level 10 because he looked at the top of my deck. Alright. So you've got some resources here, which is nice. This is definitely a deck where you can feel the power difference between resolving something that sends a bunch of cards to your graveyard and not being able to do that. A lot of resources. This is practically as good as activating. In fact, this was actually more effective than if we had used Grass. Like, we actually sent 3 more cards to grave than we otherwise would have. So at this point, I messed up. We have transaction rollback in the grave, and what I would like to do is just to find a way to activate it, ideally on Daruma Karma Cannon. And what I do is I use Eldlich to try to summon himself, but I know that it's just going to get negated by Appaloosa. So I probably should have used that first. Use transaction rollback first if I was going to. Obviously, you can't activate That's right. Yeah, so even then, I also forgot you can't activate Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon if they don't have any monsters you can actually flip face down. So these are all link monsters. I'm like, great, I'm going to clear their board. But if there wasn't anything there to flip, then, you know, it would have eliminated them immediately. So I activate this, I see, oh shoot, I can't use Karma Cannon. What's another target? So I choose Trap Trick, which is really nice because now I can use any trap that I have access to in my deck that I have duplicates of. And in this case, it's going to be Needle Sealing. At this point in the deck, I only had 2 of these, but I actually bring it up to 3. Like, this deck loves just annihilating the board and then, like, building it back up once, like, everyone's resources have been equalized. So I'm actually running triple of these, triple Torrential, and triple Daruma, just as, like, gigantic 1-card board wipes. So in this case, if I had Transaction rollbacked into Trap Trick and then Needle Sealing blew up their board, then I would have also had the ability to special summon Lord in addition to everything. So that was a mistake on my part. But blow up their board, use some of our resources to get more cards in the field, and we have a way to special summon. Oh, yeah, that's right. They did something where they sent Cosmic Cyclone to grave from deck and then somehow were able to set it from the deck. If you look at their deck list, they only have 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, and they actually drew both. So I have Lord of the Heavenly Prison, but now my board is just totally... well, their board is also wiped out, so we'll see how it goes. Plus Lord is going to be a big body in a search. But we have like 0 interrupt... well, we have Transaction rollback in the grave. That's right, whenever you think you don't have an interruption, turns out you do. Yeah, so here I didn't chain Eldlich to Huaquero in order to banish, because I really just want to get Lord out and get a search off. And we can special summon this by just kind of tributing it later. That'll actually give us an extra 1,000 attack. Oh, and it didn't matter whatever we were going to set. I was debating doing this versus maybe another Reasoning versus just a Pot of Extrav, but he was able to pop it somehow. I had no idea he could do that, but there you go. I kind of love this aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! When you're playing a bunch of different decks that you don't fully understand, and then the process of the duel is one where you actually learn what the cards do. So here we had basically game, 3,000, 3,500, only 6,000 life points, but Link Rebo can tribute to make some monsters attack 0. We pop it, and now they're toast. And they just give up. Easy money. Alright. What is next for Eldlich? Oh yeah, Evil Eye. So this is another deck where I went into it and I was like, what the heck is this? What are they doing? They're adding equip spells, they're making a monster that like loses life points. Like, that's another case where it's just like, you have to read. So I don't know if this guy I'm playing made misplays. I don't know. So at this point in the deck, I was also running 3 Huaquero and 3 Conquistador, but I had way too many hands that were like this, where I just have too much Eldlich Ensign. Like, we all love the Golden Lord. He's great. He's fabulous. He doesn't take shit from anybody. But you don't want too many of these traps, because they kind of need a couple of pieces to all work together. And I would really prefer if one of these was an evenly matched or a torrential tribute or something. Yeah, so the only things I know about Evil Eye is they have like a counter trap that they can search that's like an Omni Negate, and then they can make a Link monster, or even just the regular guy, that equips an equip spell that makes it so you can't be targeted, can't be destroyed, and then he can pop a card every turn. So I'm like, okay, it's interesting. I think it's supposed to be like a control deck similar to us, where you're just kind of popping things, but they don't really have floodgates. It's pretty much pure poppage. So here we get lucky. The card that they pop is one of our Elixir cards, so even though I don't like having a lot of them, here it's like, oh no, you destroyed 2 of my back row. Anyways. And now we have a floodgate. We can negate and destroy a monster, which this thing can't be destroyed because it has the equip spell. We'll see if we can get rid of that. And then we have a pop if we chain these together. So I activate Power Sink Stone, and I thought he would just like immediately pop it. I was kind of baiting it because I wanted to not have to deal with this anymore. But he plays the entire duel under this because he only activates like one monster effect a turn. So also every time it activates an effect, he loses life points and it gets bigger. Yeah, so here I was hoping I could pop this, and then after it was popped, maybe he would activate an effect. I could Solemn Strike it, but it doesn't work out. So something else here is every turn he activates an effect in the standby phase to negate something, which means that after he pops as well, then he's used 2 effects and his effects are negated. So it says if it has 2600 or higher, or it was summoned using a monster with 2600 or higher attack, it could attack multiple times, but it's always going to be negated as long as he's popping before he gets to battle phase. And he has a thing where he can pay life points and just reset it. So I actually looked up online. Apparently if he gets too low, this effect to lose 500 is like automatic, which means he would just die. So I didn't know it at the time, but there is kind of a ticking clock going on. Yeah, I said earlier I don't like having too many Eldlich cards, but here it's really paying off. Like, it's just pure grind game. Stall, stall, stall. This floodgate doesn't even really matter. It's basically just like this Eldlich engine holding the line. Don't let them through, boys. Yeah, no need to give them an extra draw. We'll wait till next turn. Oof. Well, I guess we're going to try to pop the equip spell on the end phase, then maybe we can target it, do something. But then they just bounce Lord back to the hand, so this is rough. And he banished one of our Lords. You only ever need 2 because the amount of times where Lord gets banished twice is super rare. However, when it does happen, it really sucks, so we need to keep him protected. Using even more Eldlich engine, like you wouldn't even know that this is like a grass Eldlich engine that's running like Nadir's Servant and, you know, triple Solemn Strike, triple Needle Sealing, all that stuff. This is just like, oh yeah, I have Eldlich cards. And they're down to 1,000 life points already. So basically, if they activate 2 more monster effects, they're dead. And they have a mandatory effect they have to activate every standby phase. Okay, so now they can't activate effects anymore. I mean, they can make a big monster, but they activated an effect already, so it's negated. Yeah, so he's just trying all sorts of crap, because he knows that if he doesn't kill me this turn, then he's dead. And now we're getting Engine online. We summoned Daruma Karma Cannon. So at the time, I thought, oh yeah, I bet the 500 effect isn't mandatory. I bet it'll just, like, whatever, stop doing it or something. I don't know why I thought that, but I set Karma Cannon here because on the next phase, when the stone turns off, I didn't want him to pop it. But it turned out that was unnecessary. Yeah, we're just going to flip this, it goes away, and then, you know, we win. And he was going to die on the standby phase because of the mandatory effect. Pretty fun duel. I feel like he probably misplayed there, but, you know, I'll take it. Duel number 4. What have we got? Mathmech. All right, got a Mathmech duel. Mathmech is an interesting deck. I feel like it is one that maybe should be built around going second. Like, they're fantastic at just one turn killing you and playing through disruptions to set up a board that could still, like, one turn kill you. I don't know. I don't really play Mathmech that much. That's just an observation. Another observation is, like a lot of the decks that aren't sort of on the ranked ladder, like, a lot of the decks that aren't like tier 1, you know, Snake Eyes, Branded, even something like Lab, they aren't amazing at recurring their resources. Like, look at this, they're down 4 extra deck monsters, 5 extra deck monsters. doing more stuff. You can kind of zone out through this. All these combos are usually pretty similar to each other. Okay, so at this point, what do they have? They have Superfactorial is one of these, the trap that'll rip 3 and give them a negate, and then they're going to send a spell trap negate off this guy in a sec. And they're going to draw, so there's almost no way they don't have like an Ash at this point. Alright, draw 2, Ash. Yeah, they always have Ash. But they rarely have more than one. Yeah, so here, I kind of was hoping I would be able to set Torrential Tribute as well, so that when he rips 2, one of them would have been Transaction Rollback. But this is probably the smart thing to do, but to, you know, activate before everything is set, so he might be able to rip one that I don't want him to send. So I'm hoping he sends Eldlich and Rollback, but we'll see what happens. Another duel I had against this against a Mathmech player, they did this on my phase, on their turn, so that the negate would still be alive. But since they do it on my turn, yeah, they rip it before the spells and traps can activate, but now this isn't a negate anymore. It is, however, destruction protection, which again, reading is important. I probably should have read that this thing protects a lot of his cards from getting destroyed, but, you know, to each his own. So he still has a spell trap negate. He has these guys, and there's a Link 1 monster you can summon that's going to be another another trap negate. So he has 1 negate, maybe he'll have 2 in a sec, so I need to activate things and clear the board ASAP. He summoned a monster, so I figured, okay, perfect, this is the first negate, it'll go out of the way, and then I can just, like, transaction rollback into Karma Cannon or something. So instead what he does here is, because I didn't realize this card protects his cards from getting destroyed, then he actually lets this go through. In fact, he also uses this guy's effect to send this card, which you can banish from the grave to prevent from being destroyed. So I thought I was baiting an interruption, and it turns out I was not. I mean, I'm still expending resources of his, but yeah, and now he's got 2 negates, and he can OTK here, so I'm just like, I need to find a way to live. And ideally, the way I would live is by transaction rollback hitting Karma Cannon. This card is not a Link monster, can be flipped over, we could clear the board. However, he has 2 different spell trap negates, this guy and this guy, so I need to find a way to bait at least one of them out. Well, actually, I need to find a way to bait both of them. But instead what he does, again, he like knows that I'm trying to bait out his negates, so instead he just chains Max C to get a draw off of this. So he's very patient, but I feel like maybe that'll end up coming back to haunt him a bit. He only has 6 cards in his extra deck, so I figure I just need to eliminate what he has, and then we'll be good. Alright, I'm trying to trap trick into, I don't know, something, Karma Cannon, but we used one of the negates. That's too bad. So we still have one pretty powerful interruption, Karma Cannon on... Okay, so here we kind of top-decked into exactly the card we need, which is Burial Goods. You can use this to send any spell or trap to the grave, which is usually transaction rollback. It's at 1, unfortunately, but it does its job really well. So here we can bait out his final interruption by, you know, transaction rollbacking, which would send his gigantic monster to grave. He's not going to allow that. Another Maxi. Yeah, here we have to Karma Cannon before we summon Eldlich, because then he would get flipped face down. So, yeah. Instead, we just have this great big monster, 3,800, can't be destroyed, try to protect our life points to maybe clear their board. So at this point, they don't have any more negates. So I figure, okay, I can just sit here, wait for them to try to, you know, OTK me or something, either go to battle phase or make access code. And then, after they do that, I can transaction rollback, Karma Cannon, flip everything. Engine's giving us a little bit of follow-up. Here he just sends something. I think he maybe hoped he had more resources, but this actually didn't do anything. It only negated for 1 turn, and he sent it on my turn. But it does make his monster's attack larger. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just waiting him to get to access code. So like he has 3s 3 cards in his extra deck, all these cards. If he summons access code, then, you know, I Karma Cannon everything, and then there's, you know, it's pretty much game over. However, I got into autopilot here, so I was like, yep, where's the access code? Where's the access code? And then, for whatever reason, I didn't realize that he's reborning his Linkuriboh, which is a trap negate. I'm like, and as soon as he does this, I'm like, dang it, I threw. Oh, this is so frustrating. You know, I like thought I had a chance to have a really cool win against Mathmech, but I messed it up. I wasn't paying attention. He summons a trap negate. Now he makes access code. Luckily, Eldlich can't be destroyed by card effects this turn. He didn't read that, I guess. He pops this. Here, the reason I activate it is because I'm, again, trying to bait the Linkuriboh effect to negate it, which obviously there's, like, no way he's going to do. So that was the reason I set that, just for it to get popped again. So I'm like, ah, crap. So we get to battle phase. I'm like, well, I'm going to die. He's going to swing with access code and then swing, do 13,000 damage. But just for, like, you know, as my last breath, I spit at thee. I activated transaction rollback. And it goes off. It doesn't get negated. Everything goes to grave. For a while, I was like, well, what the heck? Did he just completely misplay? Like, was he not paying attention? Did he die at the board? Why did that go off? And then, after doing some research, I realized when your opponent activates a trap card, you can tribute this card and negate that card's effect. However, transaction rollback, it may look like a trap card because of the color and the fact that it says trap card, but when you use it in the grave, it's not considered a trap card. It's considered a trap effect, which means that it can't be negated, because this only negates trap cards, and it's not a trap effect. So, you know, the more you know. Now he has, like, no resources left, 2 cards in his extra deck. I still have my Eldlich engine going, and I'm just going to start punching him. If he activates Ash Blossom here, he doesn't, but if he did, I would have had a lot more follow-up with Thrust. So, that was an exciting game. I feel like all of these duels I've been learning quite a bit about my cards, my opponent's cards, how to chain things properly. Alright, what have we got? Kashtira, Snake Eyes, Diabellstar. Okay. Yeah, that's one thing I really appreciate about this Eldlich deck is just, it's not very forgiving. Like, if you make a single misplay, your opponent, especially if they have Snake Eyes or Branded or something, will just, like, completely go off and eviscerate you. But if you pay attention, if you don't misplay, if you use every card properly, it's completely possible to win against any deck. They're doing the Snake Eye stuff, so I'm just going to read some stats for you. So over the course of 43 games that I had in Master to get to Master 1, I had 21 games where I went first, and in those 21 games, I won 10 and lost 11. So that's a 47.6 win rate, which is not very good. Like, you're not getting to Master 1 with a win rate like that. However, going second, this deck had, out of 22 duels, won 15 and only lost 7. So it had a 68.2 win rate going second. Maybe I was just getting lucky. Maybe I was just misplaying. I didn't build this deck to go second. I built this deck to go first. It has like 6 floodgates in it, but it wins a lot going second. So I almost think there might be a way to like do it on purpose, to purposely go second. I don't know. So here what we're doing. First, obviously, I activate Grass. If they had had Ash Blossom, then we would have cried, I guess. I mean, we still have plenty of cards to set on their turn. Like, they can only spin 1 with, like, Unicorn, and then after that we have a Floodgate and 2 interruptions. Maybe we can do something. But they do let it go through, so now we have 30 cards in grave, and that's when this deck really pops off. So they're going to hit Call by the Grave on my Eldlich to banish and negate. I was going for their field spell, which sucks. So now we only have one Eldlich, the effect is negated. However, what's really important is we managed to get transaction rollback in the grave, and let's see, evenly matched. So this play I just did was like, oh, I need to get transaction rollback in the grave somehow, I should, send it. What I should have done is taken a couple seconds and read what was in my graveyard, saw that I already had transaction rollback, and then maybe I would have saved this Eldlich for later. So like I was saying, misplays suck, but this play you're going to see is pretty great. So normally, evenly matched, you activate it from your hand, it banishes equal number of cards that you control as opposed to your opponent, which means that if there's just one card, which means that you just have one card that you're playing from your hand, they have to banish everything except one card. So here they'd probably keep one of their Flamberge Dragons or something. However, you can transaction rollback on evenly matched in the grave, and then you have 0 cards on your field. Yeah, they're just activating called by, like, for the hell of it, but we just banish everything. Maybe that's why this deck goes so well, is so good going second. I mean, people set up boards with multiple negates, I don't know. But yeah, now we've got a full board, engine, floodgate, multiple disruptions. What I love about Power Sync Stone in this particular meta is, like, everyone's activating multiple monster effects all the time. Like, if you activate Ash, for example, Snake Eyes Ash, that's one monster effect. It searches out Poplar. Poplar activates in hand to special summon, that's the second. So Poplar doesn't even get a search. It's already negated. So this 2 monster effect limit might seem like it kind of allows your opponent a lot of leeway, if you're like me and play a lot of trap decks where you don't need to activate monster effects. But this is basically skill drain. And at this point, he only has 1 monster effect activated. He's hoping to just swing with this little XYZ monster, and bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, it's, gonna make Zeus, and either this turn or next turn will send everything to grave. Again, reading on my part, all I have to do here is activate, all I have to do is target this with something, and then it'll activate an effect to make it so it can't be destroyed, but the process of activating that effect to make it not able to be destroyed would make that this counter go up, so then it would be able to be destroyed, it wouldn't be able to attack, I could just summon Waquero. So here I do it kind of weird where I use the transaction rollback in the grave and send Malong, because I'm like, okay, it can't be destroyed, but it can be returned to hand. So yeah, this is a case where I made a couple of mistakes, but it didn't matter, because when you banish their entire field like that, you're given a little bit of leeway. Alright, now we're getting all the way up into Master 2 versus Branded Despia. Let's see what we've got. I think probably when I start doing the Duelist Cup, maybe I'll work on a version of this deck that only has 40 cards. Yeah, I don't know. Eldlich definitely needs more time in the tank. The fact that this deck wins like 21% of the time more going second versus going first, and that's like 21 games going first, 22 games going second. Yeah, something's off there. I should be able to do something to make the win rate going first a lot better, and then this deck would be really killer. I actually had so he's doing the normal branded stuff. Branded Bestial Rebellion. Alright, so here, this is a pretty good board. He can use this. I was talking while he was doing it, but he also searched out the Despia monster, where if you fuse using it as material, then you can special summon back a monster that was banished. So he can play around evenly matched really well here. Even if I hit him with evenly matched, he banishes himself to send something to grave, which gets more draw power, and then like on my turn, or whatever, he'll activates Branded in red, Diffuse, which then also summons Rebellion, so He's in a good spot. Alright, he used a monster effect, which means we can use thrust. So here, like I was saying, if I went into evenly matched, then he still actually has a lot of plays thanks to Branded in Red and the Despia monster he has in hand. So instead, I'm going to high roll it. We grab Grass, so he only has 29. We're going to send 20 plus cards to grave. He already used Ash Blossom. We hit a transaction rollback. We hit 2 transaction rollbacks. We didn't hit any evenly matched, but we can send evenly matched using Foolish Burial Goods. And now everything is gone. I'm telling you, it's the combo. Alright, last duel. Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes Kashtira. I don't know, is this optimal to be running Snake Eyes with like a tiny little Kashtira package? Not sure. Well, let's find out. I love my field. Nice and gold. Alright, going second again. The standard. Do combo players enjoy this process of going first? Where you have kind of this linear... Maybe if you're good, like there's a lot less linearity, like you know how to make a bunch of different combos. Princess. Snake Eyes is not that bad to deal with. The issue is just that they can recover really well, but they don't put up a lot of disruptions, like, you know, from my perspective. I mean, okay, so they have 4 Material Appaloosa. A lot of people are like, oh man, that's crazy. You know, for me, I, like, do not care at all, which is the benefit of running a deck like this. Okay, so what have we got? So it's, like, mostly Eldlich cards. Like, this is not ideal. This is after I cut down an Eldlich card, but we're going to play through. So first, we try to use the effect. We figure, like, you know, it's probably not going to be able to go through Appaloosa. Is probably going to negate it, but this field spell is really annoying. It brings their monsters back. They don't have the dragon, so actually me summoning a monster is the only way he gets IP in the deal. Okay, so he had a Called by the Grave, so it's not getting negated, which is actually great for me. I did not send my Eldlich, so now, chain, summon back, and now we actually got a little bit of removal, and we have a decent body to protect our life points, a couple of interruptions, like all of a sudden this is looking really good. Yeah, they destroy my Eldlich, but again, I do not care. Getting destroyed doesn't matter for the Golden Lord. So here they're probably going to negate it, but this way we at least get the trap in the grave, so it'll come back as an Eldlich. And now we have a pop, a double pop, and a negate. So here I could have popped it right away, but then there's like maybe it'll summon back somehow. It'll summon back if they get a fire monster on the field, then I special summon. So let's just wait for them to actually use the effect, and then it's gone, and we don't have to worry about its effect mattering. But I forgot about the amphibious Ambo Whale, which is not great. You can't be forgetting this stuff. But he's going to pop something, so now I just have to chain everything and hope that he doesn't have enough follow-up to kill me. And he has the Ash, so one of my negates is gone. So basically all we have is Dogmatic of Punishment, which we're going to use. First pop the former 4 Material Appaloosa, and then this mystery card, which was totally useless against us. Now they have just 1 card. And like I said, this is the type of game that you get a lot if you don't like this kind of clear everything and then have kind of a slow, grindy game to finish them off and be really strategic with which cards you are selecting. You know, maybe this deck isn't for you, But, I mean, look at this. Like, at the start of this turn, we had nothing, and because of the Eldlich engine, all of a sudden we have a non-targeting destruction and a non-targeting banish. So this Promethean princess has been erased, and, you know, we have a ability to destroy something, and we summon back a monster. Fantastic. Oh, we can summon a monster, rather. So he's pretending he has, like, evenly matched, but I don't care. Or maybe he has evenly matched in hand, he doesn't realize you have to get rid of these cards in order to use it. I don't know. So I just banished the princess. And we summon everything. If this had been a called by, we would have dodged it with this Eldlich. GG's. Eldlich the Golden Lord is now a Master 1 deck. So it's definitely not easy. Like I said, overall it has like a 58.1% win rate in Master, 43 different games. Let's actually look at the profile. Great. So I'm going to go through these one at a time. First we have our Dogmatica engine. I really like this. I would probably even run this in a 40-card version. Nadir's Servant is just great going first or second. Going first, you can send Kick Kalos, which mills 5 to grave, which obviously this deck is built around milling things like Transaction Rollback and the Eldlich engine to grave. Or going second, you can send an Entis or a Malong to try to bounce or destroy something. Going first, you also activate this, and then you grab a monster, which can search out a Dogmatica Punishment, which you can use to destroy something and either get a second destroy or, you know, send cards to grave, try to get a transaction rollback, or you can send Bucephalus, which sends Garura, which gives you a draw 1. So overall, this 8-card Dogmatica package is really useful. Obviously, you have the Eldlich engine himself, so you never need more than 2 of these guys. It's very rare that both of them will get banished, and even if they do, like, you have a few other bodies as well, but yeah, just 2 is fine. You don't want to have more than 1 in your hand, for sure. You almost never want to have any in your hand. And then you also have the 3 Eldlich traps, and the 5 Eldlich smaller monster traps. So these ones you summon as a monster that can get a banish or get a destroy. Because we're running the 60-card deck, I have a 4th Eldlich trap spell. This one, which you saw, you can activate on your turn to summon him from grave. It's pretty good. If I was running this as a 40-card deck, I would probably cut it. Let's see. We have the Lord of Heavenly Prison. This is great. It is a gigantic body that you can use that summons to grave. It's a level 10, which means you can XYZ into the Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. So this is actually how you can get an OTK, is if you have Lord plus Eldlich. You make this, burn your opponent for 2,000, make this, which you can detach and make it have 6,000, and so that's 8,000 damage pretty much immediately. Obviously on their own they're 5,500, so it doesn't come up a ton, but it's a nice tool to have in your toolbox. Also, Lord, when you summon him on your opponent's turn after having activated him, can search out follow-up, which is great when you have a grind game like this. Even though we're only running 1 grass, you can search it out really easily, or if you already activated it, you could search out reasoning or something. Next, we have all of our Get My Cards in the Grave cards, which obviously is Foolish Burial Goods, can send any spell or trap. It's usually either Transaction Rollback to create an interruption, or if you have a way to get Transaction Rollback in the grave already, you send one of your other traps that you want to use. And then I took out Fiend Comedian and replaced it with Reasoning. It's not once per turn, it special summons a monster if they guess it wrong, and it puts a decent number of cards in grave most of the time. Like, it only stops milling once one of your 7 total monsters gets hit. So, like, it can put a lot of cards in the grave, and I've never felt like this was too few monsters, especially when you remember all of these are monsters as well, and Eldlich can come back from the grave really easily. More consistency cards, we have our Pot of Extrav for a draw 2, Pot of Prosperity for a search for 6, and then we have Triple Tactics Thrust, which like, I almost never resolve it going first, which maybe is a problem for this deck, but like you need to also activate Reasoning or Nadir or something and then them ash it in order for you to activate Thrust going first. And even then, your targets aren't that good, like just a single board wipe or something. Like, it's fine, but going second, it's much better because you can obviously get evenly matched and even the odds. Or you can grab Grass or Reasoning or whatever you're missing. We have two Called by the Grave. There are just so many monsters that have effects in the grave that you just want to banish and get rid of. Normally, you don't really want to have something like Called by the Grave in a trap deck like this, but for this meta specifically, it's really useful. I wouldn't cut it. Next, because we're running a trap deck, you need to have your traps that just annihilate everything. This board is about the grind game. It's about wiping your opponent's board and then, being able to slowly whittle away their life points. We have triple Torrential Tribute, which destroys all monsters on the field. Because you almost never have any monsters on the field, it's basically a quick effect Raigeki. Same with Needle Sealing. If there are 4 or more monsters on the field, destroy all face-it monsters. I just found myself at some point with a previous version of this deck, like, man, if only I had more traps that just annihilate everything. Like, I had 6 with the Torrential Tribute, with the Karma Cannon. Karma Cannon is great. There's tons of Link monsters, which is, just as good or even better than Torrential or Needle Sealing at getting rid of, because it avoids all that destruction protection if they ever make something that's invincible, like, the Ignister tower, or like a Pearly Noir or whatever, something that's unaffected by card effects. You just flip this and it's gone. But I found I had those 6 cards that wipe everything. I just needed more. Eventually I remembered Needle Sealing as a card. So in this particular meta, people summon 4 or more monsters all the time. It is so common that, like, I'll have a Trap Trick and I'll wait until the battle phase and I'll Trap Trick into Needle Sealing, and just, like, instead of getting killed, they suddenly have no monsters left and now I'm the one who's in charge. Like, probably there are going to be other metas where you don't have as many cards and maybe more cards have destruction protection, but right now Needle Sealing is goated. Additional trap cards that are important, you have Dogmatic of Punishment. Normally you only want to run 2 because it's once per turn, and ideally you want as many traps that you have to be as live as possible. That's why I only run 2 Ice Dragon's Prison, because even though this is great as a non-targeting banish, and it's kind of like the main way that we win against Labyrinth, because it's once per turn, you want every card you have to be live when you set 4 pass. But we're running 3 here because we're milling a bunch of cards with, all of our mill abilities, and we want to actually be able to search it off of Ecclesia, which we can grab through Nadir. So running 3, I probably wouldn't cut it down. 3 seems like it's pretty good. And final traps. So Trap Trick is great. It just makes all of your normal traps way more consistent. You saw in that one game, you can actually use Transaction Rollback on Trap Trick in your grave and grab pretty much any trap that you need. So it is extremely effective, and you can use it the turn it's set. And then Evenly Matched is your going second card between all of the ways that you can mill it to grave or being able to search it off of Thrust. It's just really powerful. In fact, now I think about it, maybe I should cut Thrust, because it's only ever good going second, and I never have trouble going second for like a going first card. Something to think about. Yep, so I talked about that. And then Transaction Rollback, this is the new card, which is kind of the main reason we created this deck, right? You have all these interruptions that you get off of milling things to grave, and it makes the whole deck way more powerful. We have Triple Solemn Strike. If they have, like, a bunch of monsters that can negate, Solemn Strike annihilates it. It's a counter trap, they can't respond. We have the standard floodgates that all can clear the board or make it so they can't respond to you anymore right away as soon as you flip them, meaning they instantly need to, like, do something to respond to it, which is a really good type of floodgate. And then Power Sink Stone. I just found that I'm winning more games than I lose when I have this, and I often, whoops, I often found that I wished that I had more, so I'm running it at 3, and in this meta where normal summon Ash, search Poplar, special summon Poplar is the way a lot of players start their turns, it just is almost always at 2 right away. Finally, let's talk about the extra deck. So Elder Entity Entis is the ideal target that you send off of Nadir or Dogmatica Punishment. It'll just pop any card that you want on the field. It's a UR, and a lot of people who don't run trap decks don't have this. So alternatives that you can use are Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. You can send it, and if it's your turn, you can banish that card and destroy a monster. Alternatively, you could send Skull Wagon, which you can banish it from your graveyard and destroy a spell or trap. So if you're on a budget and you can only afford to make one of these right now, then maybe you fill up your deck with a lot more of these. However, if you're using punishment or whatever on your opponent's turn, it's not actually going to be live until it gets back to your turn. Like, it's a slower effect. Kikalos is great as a mill 5. Garura and Bucephalus is a way to get value out of popping a bigger monster. There are plenty of times when you want to destroy something with like 3,000 or more attack, and in those cases you can send Bucephalus to get a draw 1. Some people run 5-head dragon, which you get kind of for free through some of the tutorial modes, because they're like, oh, if they have a big monster, how am I going to destroy it? Well, you destroy it with Elder Entity Entis. You target one of their smaller monsters, and then this can destroy something that has like 5,000, 10,000 attack or whatever. But in the cases where they just have one bigger monster, you can send Bucephalus, which then sends Garura, which gets you a draw. This is also kind of a richer person's set of targets. If you can't afford to make that, just make more of those Skull Wagons I mentioned. Malong is a great target. You can return a card to hand, and it's like Entis, where it activates right away when you send it. So some things like Mirror Jade you don't actually want to destroy, or like Kaleido Heart or something. So you could have more copies of Malong. I have a couple copies of Chaos Angel. Most of the rest of these extra deck cards don't come up very often. You could probably make this just one Chaos Angel or none. The way you summon this is off of one of these guys and one of these guys, or it can be two of the same or whatever. When they're special summoned, they're considered level 5 light monsters, which means it would be summoned using the effects of 2 light monsters, which makes this guy unaffected by monster effects, which is a pretty powerful protection ability. So you can actually clear the boards by banishing a card and then push for game. I mentioned how this is kind of an OTK. If you wanted, you could also throw in Zeus here, but they don't come up very often. They feel like they're a bit more of win more type cards or win now type cards. You can also cut those for more of the targets that I mentioned. Another target you can consider is Win Pegasus Ad Ignister. This one, if you send it to grave and they destroy something, then you can banish it, target a card your opponent controls, and shuffle it into deck. So it only activates when your opponent does something, namely when they destroy one of your cards, but it's useful. Omega is also a card that a lot of people have now, so if you have it, you could throw this in here too. It's a way to make your deck have more recursion. You send this to your grave, you shuffle something already in grave back into the deck. You could also shuffle something in your opponent's deck to grave, so actually it might have some pretty good uses shuffling there, Promethean Princess or something. And then other cards, we have Link Spider and Imduk. These both require a normal monster, which these are considered normal monsters. It's nice that if you summoned it, then you can link this into something, then your trap is in the grave, and then you can keep your engine going. The Light Charmer, you can use Eldlich and any of these other traps or whatever. It's just a way to get your... Usually you have Eldlich and one of your traps, so you'll send both to grave. Eldlich sends one of your traps on the field to come back as a 3.5k monster. It's a way to recycle everything. Blackluster Soldier, this card comes up a lot. Maybe it's because I focus on trying to make it more than maybe I should. But being untargetable and indestructible is pretty good in this meta. and there are a number of decks that have a hard time outing it. So at the very least, if you need to stall for a turn or two, this is a good one. You could also consider getting just like IP Masquerena, let me Nightmare. Some of the Nightmare cards, Nightmare Unicorn, Phoenix, Cerberus, as just kind of a toolkit of link monsters that are generic. You can use any monster you want, and then they do something like destroy a spell or shuffle a card into the deck. Whatever you want. Other than the targets for Entis and Punishment, the extra deck is kind of optional. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this deck profile, and the rest of the duels that you saw. Catch you in the next one. Peace.